You're listening to the Call Kent podcast, where Kent C. Dodds answers questions and gives insights to software engineers like you. Now, let's hear the call.
Hi Kent, my name is Tim. I have a few questions regarding scaling the Epic stack within a single region. With the assumption that we are having a huge amount of users in one region, my question is, would you recommend switching to other database technologies, or would you have multiple SQLite replicas in the same region, with each of them being connected to remix apps in a one-to-one manner? My second question is, assuming that we have the Epic stack set up, what would you do if one remix server can't just keep up? Would you introduce caching or any types of application, additional threads to distribute and keep up with the workload? Thank you.
And that was the call. Here's what Kent had to say.
Hey, Tim. Thank you so much for the question. So, if you have a lot of traffic in a single region, then switching to a different database isn't necessarily going to fix that particular problem, because SQLite is pretty good. It's quite fast, and so with if you had a single database now, every single read is going to be hitting that one database, whereas with SQLite, you get the distributed nature of that. And so each instance of your application will have its own database that it can read from. And so that reduces the amount of pressure on the single database. But of course, you can distribute your regular database, like a Postgres database, with a bunch of read replicas. But at that point, you're not really getting a whole lot of benefit over just using SQLite anyway. And so you can have multiple SQLite replicas in the same region. That's no problem, and that works out pretty well. And that every region that or every instance of your app that you pull up is going to reduce the amount of pressure on the primary instance, which will not only be responsible for some of the reads, but or at least its share of the reads, but will also be responsible for all of the writes as well. And so, your primary region is always going to be the most impacted or busy, because it's responsible for writes as well as whatever its share of the reads are. So as far as the if a single remix server can't keep up with the load that you have, then I wouldn't necessarily reach straight for caching. Adding multiple instances, that's horizontal scaling, could potentially help that to reduce the amount of workload on a single instance. Caching really is not going to do a ton of good for you unless what you're doing is like really complicated queries, or you're interacting with a third party, because the cache that's implemented in the Epic stack is running inside a SQLite anyway. And so, unless you're doing something computationally expensive, then or potentially a really complicated query that could potentially benefit from a cache. If you're interacting with third-party APIs, then adding a cache to that's like the primary reason that the cache is built into the Epic stack, is for those types of things where maybe you're paying for access to the third-party API, or they throttle you, or rate limit you, or something like that. So having a cache in place there is a really good idea. And then a cache for any computationally expensive stuff. Like on my website, I build all of my MDX files into my blog posts, and that is computationally expensive. I do that at runtime. And so that's pretty much what the cache is for. If you're just caching stuff that's coming out of the database, you're probably not going to see a whole lot of benefit there. One of the best things that you can do is make sure that you're indexing your tables properly. And that is something that I teach in Epic Web. So look forward to the data modeling workshop on Epic Web coming in the next, I'm thinking we're almost down to the point where we can say weeks, but in the next month or two. So anyway, hopefully that answers your question, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
This has been the Call Kent podcast. Learn more about Kent at kentcdodds.com and get your own questions answered at kentcdodds.com/calls.